Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Box. My name is Nick. I'm going to show you one of my favorite board games to play, and it's called Seasons. So why is this one of my favorite games to play? Well, there's a lot of different mechanics involved, and I think it's really well put together. There's dice rolling, hand management, card drafting. It's a medium amount of strategy. I just think they do a really good job of incorporating really fun mechanics of a board game and putting it together in this really awesome package. All right, so here's the box. Beautiful artwork. That's something that really is appealing to me, is how great the artwork in this game is. So I'm gonna go over some of the components and then we'll go into them a little more in depth and then do setup and then how to play a couple of turns. This is the game board. This is the 4 different seasons of the game, and what you're doing in this board game is you are competing wizards or mages, and there are 4 different colors to pick from, and you are competing to see who the best one in the land is, in the world that it takes place in. Is called Zit. There's another game that they made that takes place in that actual world as well. It's called Lords of Zit. This is a way to keep track of your victory points throughout the game. We already showed off the player mats. Here is some of the resource tokens that you can get throughout the game. There's colored dice that go with it. They're nice, big, chunky dice that you roll, and you can get resources, power up your character, get crystals, a bunch of other really fun stuff. But the best thing, as we talked about the artwork in this game, the cards really show that off. I'll get a closer look on some of these cards. But just the artwork is really, really awesome. They're really fun looking cards. So let's break down how you set up the game, the components and what they can do for you, and then we'll walk through a couple of turns so you get an idea of how to play one of my favorite games, Seasons. All right, so I have a close-up of the player board, and again, the different colors, it doesn't matter which one you pick, it's just your personal preference. They're all laid out identically the same, just different colors and different little guys on here. So the top 7 spots up here, these are where the resources that you gather throughout the game go. So if you're getting tokens, they go up into these spots, and you can hold no more than 7. If you're ever presented with getting additional energy tokens and you don't have any spots on your track up here to put them in, you'll have to get rid of the ones that you don't want before you can add new tokens to it. The next spot here is, this is the summoning gauge, so this is 0 through 15. This is how many cards you can put out into play. So if you have 2 cards out into your play area and you have a summoning gauge of 2, you have to increase it before you put any more cards out in the game. And that starts at 0. And then this is your bonus track, which also starts at 0. This one actually takes you in the negative. There's a -5, -12, and a -20. And what those do is allow you to take special actions throughout the game. This action right here allows you to turn in 2 resource tokens to get any other ones that you want. So if you have a water and an air token and you want to trade them out for 2 earth tokens, you just take them off of your bank and then add the 2 that you want on your player board. This one right here, it's a little complicated. It's an ability to get more crystals or victory points when you do an action called transmute. And what you're doing there is turning in these energy tokens to get crystals. And the ratio is either 1 to 1, 2 to 1, or 3 to 1, depending on the season and the token you're using. But you can trade these in and get 1 additional when you do the transmute action. This spot right here increases your summoning gauge up 1 level. So if you really desperate to increase your track and you're sitting at 4 and you want to play your next card and you're already sitting with 4 out in front of you, you can just go -5 at the end of the game and then up your summoning gauge 1. And then the final one is my personal favorite. It's the draw 2, keep 1 action. So you will go through the deck and take the top 2 cards, read through them and find out which one you want, put it into your hand, and then discard the other one. So you can do this action 3 times and at the end have -20. You can do just one of these actions and have -5. It's up to you how you want to do it. but they just kind of give you an extra ability if you need to perform an action and you're kind of desperate. So it's really helpful sometimes. It's kind of a situational bonus. This spot right here doesn't do anything. It's this, you punch it out when you get these player boards in the game. But my game group uses it to put the dice that you're choosing for the round, so it's just a kind of fun little spot to stick your dice so everyone knows what you're grabbing. The next thing to look at in a little bit greater detail is the actual game board. So I talked about earlier, these are the 4 different seasons, and that just means that those are the dice that you'll be rolling. So if you're in spring, you will be rolling the green dice, which are the spring dice. And this right here, where these energy token markers are, you can see the water, air, fire, and earth. This is the transmute guide. So if you want to transmute 2 of your fire tokens in winter, you will get 2 crystals for each token that you're turning back in. And you'll see there's 3 crystals that you get for the earth token. So just pay attention to what you have on your player board, and when you want to or you need to transmute, just consult this guide and figure out how many crystals you're going to be getting for each token. And that bonus action on your player board just gives you an additional crystal for each token that you're transmuting. So it's something to do at the end of the game a lot of the time, or if you're building a deck that constantly is earning these tokens, you'll just keep generating these, and you'll want to keep racking up victory points, and you can keep doing the transmute action. So now let's take a look at some of the cards. So the purple ones here are considered magic items, and these orange ones are familiars or creatures. The number in the top is what the cards are worth to you in victory points at the end of the game if you've played them. So this one's worth 8 if you have put it out into play. And how you do that is by spending the resource cost on it. So this card right here takes 1 of the water tokens and 1 of the earth tokens, and then you can put it out into play as long as your summoning gauge is higher than the amount of cards you already you currently have out in play. So there are 3 symbols at the bottom of the cards that you'll want to take note of. There is a half circle with an arrow, which is this one down here, a arrow that's kind of looping through, and then there's also a gear symbol. And what the gear symbol does is allows you to tap the card or activate it on your turn and then do the text that's on the card. And then after everyone's gone and it's back to your turn again, you can then refresh the card and use it again on your next turn. What the circle does, this one up here or over here, that just means it's always in effect. So just make sure when you play those cards that if anything happens that triggers this effect, let's say for example that the seasons change. There are cards where they give you bonuses every time that it goes from a different season, so from winter to spring or from spring to summer, you'll get something. So just keep an eye out if you're playing a card with that continuous effect icon on it to do what it says if those conditions are met. And then the little half circle with the arrow, that just means immediate. As soon as you put this card into play, you've paid the cost for it, you will then read whatever it says for that symbol, and the effect will take effect immediately. The last thing to take note of is on some of these cards, especially familiars, will have costs associated that are not the resource tokens, they're actually crystal amounts. So in a 2, 3, or 4 player game, there's different costs associated with playing those cards. So now let's take a look at the dice in the game. They're big, they're chunky, they're really fun to roll. They're all split up into seasons again. So we have the winter, the spring, the summer, and the fall dice. And there's a lot of symbols on all of them, so I'll kind of go slowly over these. If you see this rectangular symbol, that is draw a card. So if you select that dice during your turn, you draw the top card from the draw deck. If you see stars on them at all, like here or over here, that just means you get to increase your summoning gauge up 1 level. These icons right here are for the different resources. So you see there's earth, there are air, there's water up here, there's fire right there. So that just means you get to select any of the tokens of that color. So this one would give you 2 water tokens, while this one would give you just 1 fire token. If you see a number on it, like this one has a 6, that is just the amount of crystals you get. It's one of the worst rolls, but it's better than nothing. So if you are left with selecting a dice with a number, you just pick it up and you gain the 6 crystals. This one, you would get 2 crystals as well as the 2 water tokens. If you see a circle around the dice, this is the ability to transmute. So much earlier in the video, I talked about turning your energy tokens into victory points or crystals. If you pick up a dice that has these circles around them, you are allowed to do the transmute action. So if you pick this one, you cannot do the transmute, you have to pick one with the circles around them. And the final thing to take note of, the little pips, the little dots you see at the bottom, what those are for is how many months to skip ahead in the game. So if you're just starting the game and the dice that you are left with, and I'll get into how the game actually works, so don't be caught off guard. I didn't go over that yet. But if the last dice left is one with 3 dots, you will move the marker forward from the first month forward 3 spaces. So you'll then end up on the 4th month in the game. And again, like I said, that'll make a lot more sense when I explain how the game actually works, but that's what the pips are for. So that should be it for the most part. There's a couple of things that come up. The rulebook is really good, actually. If you're ever stuck on something, consult the rulebook. It also has a glossary in the back of all of the different cards. So it explains what all of these cards do and all the effects that are on them. So consult the book if you ever need some help on what your cards actually do. So for this setup, it's gonna be a 2-player game. So we'll put out 1 player board there and 1 down there. You'll then put the game board out, and you'll wanna mark month number 1 and year number 1 with the 2 black cubes that they give you. You'll then put a cube on the 0 of the summoning track and a 0 on the bonus track. Then you'll set out the crystal track, which keeps track of all the victory points that are gathered throughout the game. You'll put 1 for each player on the 0 at the bottom, as well as the 0 on the top. If you get 299 crystals or more up on this crystal track, you'll just move your colored cube forward from 0 to 100, or if you're at 199 and you need to go to 200, you'll move it up from 100 to 200. You'll then put out the amount of dice that you have players plus 1. So again, this is a 2-player example, so you'll be putting out 3 dice for each of the 4 seasons. And then once you have done that, you'll want to put the resource tokens that you have within a decent amount of reach of everybody on the board. I like to put them just kind of right by the dice so everyone can have a chance to grab them all. So water, air, got fire, and down here is where the earth ones are going to go. You'll hand every player a year 2 and a year 3 token for the decks that they're about to build. You will give each player 9 cards. And what you will do then is go through and pick the 1 card out of this deck that you want. Let's just say you're taking that card for green and that card for purple. You'll then swap decks and then draw 1 card from that deck that you want. And again, I'm just putting them face down, but you'll actually go through and read and figure out what cards are in the deck and how you want to build your deck for the game. But then you'll pass it and you'll just continue doing this action until everyone has 9 cards. You'll then put out the draw deck, and then each player will take their deck that they have and they will split the cards up into 3 different decks for each of the years. So the 3 cards you want to use during the first year of the game, you'll set those aside, and then you'll do the same thing for year 2 and year 3, and then mark them with the year 2 and year 3 tokens. So that's my 2nd year deck and my 3rd year deck right there. And then this right here is a deck I'm gonna play with during the first year of the game. So again, when the marker goes all the way around and completes the first year, you'll move your year marker to number 2, and then you'll have access to the cards here in your 2nd year deck. All right, so the game is set up. We're ready to play seasons. So however you determine first player, the game recommends that you do it based off the youngest player. But however you do it, you'll take these blue dice because this black cube is in the winter months, and you'll roll them. And then the person that rolled the dice then gets to select which one they want. So this one will give you 2 of the water tokens and 3 crystals. This one gives you a water token and an air token. And this one will give you an increase on your summoning gauge and an air token, and allow you the option to transmute your energy tokens if you can or if you want to. So after you select the dice that you want, the other player gets to select the dice that they want, and then this one's put back off to the side for just a moment. Now you will then perform or take whatever is on your dice. So this player gets to increase their gauge of 1 and get 1 of the air tokens. Now, if they're able to, if the cards they have in their year 1 deck allow them to summon any of them, they pay whatever cost it is, as long as they have the summoning gauge requirement met and the energy or crystal requirement met on the cards, you can then put it out into play. Then after your turn is completely finished and there's nothing else that you can or want to do, the other player then gets to go, and then they will select the water and the air token that they picked up during that turn, and then they can perform any actions on their cards, do the same thing that the first player got to do. Once that is completed, you then refer to the dice, and however many pips are on the bottom here of this dice, that's how many spaces, 1, 2, 3 spaces forward you move the round marker. If this dice was the one that was left over instead, it just has 1 pip, so you would go from month 1 to month 2, but because this one had 3 pips on the bottom, you're actually going ahead 3 spots to the spring month here in month number 4. So then you'll put the dice back, and then the next player in turn order would then roll, and then play would continue basically from this point. So they would take this dice, and the other player takes this one, you set this one off to the side, they increase their summoning gauge, take the resources, play any cards that they wish, then it goes to the other player, they increase at the end of the turn 2 more spaces, and you just basically go through that motion the rest of the game. So you'll eventually get all the way around the track, you'll move it to year 2, and then you unlock the ability to use the other cards that you have in your year 2 deck, and you'll play through one more time, it'll pass all the way through, and then the game will be complete as you get your final deck of cards. You'll play that. Play goes through one more time, and then once it goes from month 12 back over here, that is the end of the game. So if you're sitting, for example, let's say here on month 11, and the player or the dice that's left behind has 2 pips, when that turn is over, everyone will know it'll go 1, 2, and the game will be over. So if you're sitting really close to the end, you'll want to pay attention to what pips are on the dice that you're leaving behind, just so you can think, okay, I just need 1 more turn, and then you can look and say, well, I can select the dice with a 1 or a 2 pip. I don't really want what's on this dice or this dice, but I don't want the game to end, so I'll take the 2 pip away and I'll leave this one to sit, so the marker will move just 1 more space and we can have 1 more turn in the game. So after the game is completely done, what you'll want to do is count up how many cards you have put into play throughout the game, and then count up all of the values here in the top corner, the top left corner of what each card is worth. You'll then subtract that total from how many negative points you have on the bonuses, if any, that you've used. You'll also subtract 5 points from each card that is still in your hand. So if this player has played 8 of their 9 cards and they have this one sitting here, they haven't had a chance to put it out into play before the game is over, you will lose 5 points for each card that you haven't put out into play. And then you will look over at the crystal track, find out where you are on that, and then add those numbers, hopefully add those numbers together. You don't want to subtract, that would be a bad game. But add them together and that's your final score. So if this player, let's say they played everything and these cards totaled 105 points, they used one of the bonuses, so 105 minus 5 gives them 100, and let's say they are at 50 on the crystal track, so then you can see that their score is 150. And you'll get to move that top marker up there to signify you have got 150 points at the end of the game. The other player will do the exact same thing, so you count up how many points are in the top left corner, subtract any minuses that you have for your bonus track, subtract any cards that you haven't put out into play, those are minus 5 per card, and then compile that with the crystals that you've earned through the game, and then you can do the math, figure out if you won or if you lost. In case of a tie, the rulebooks say that the player that put out the most power cards into play is the one that wins. So if both people have 100 points, this person's played 12 cards and this person's only played 6, then this person would be the winner based off of that. The only other thing that I didn't go over, in the rules, it tells you there is like an apprentice level or an intermediate or an advanced level for these cards. And they just basically have a smaller deck if you're new to the game and you're not sure what all the effects do. They tell you to take out certain amounts of cards. Same with intermediate, there's a few less restrictions. But I don't think it's that complicated of a game. You can read the text on the bottom. Like I said, there's a glossary in the back of the rule book that explains what all the different effects do. If you have a specific question about setup, about rules or the cards in general, you can always hit me up on social media, or you can leave a comment in the bottom of this video and I'll get to it as soon as possible. I'm certainly not perfect. I've made mistakes playing this game over the years, but I feel I have a really good grasp of what the cards can and can't do. So yeah, if you have a question, just leave it in the comments below and I'll be sure to get on it right away. So let's go ahead, clean everything up, and I'll come back with my final thoughts on Seasons. So there you have it, that's Seasons. You know how to play it now, go out and get it. It's a great game, I think it's awesome. Just heads up, the strategy changes if you're playing 2-player. If you add a second or third person to it, I would encourage you to play 4-player if you have the option. It's just more fun, there's a lot more going on, there's more diversity in the cards that you get to see and play with. But all in all, I think a really, really great game, really well done. There's an expansion for it, which I haven't played because I just haven't moved past the initial cards that came in this game when I bought it a couple of years ago. But let me know your thoughts. If you've played this game before, or if you looked at it for the first time and you thought, man, like, I don't see what he's talking about. I don't get why it's so great. Or I have played that game, it is phenomenal. Just let me know in the comments below if you've played Seasons, what you think about it, or what you thought just watching it for the first time. If you're at all encouraged to go out and buy it. If you enjoy a game like Magic the Gathering, but you don't want to keep up with all the cards that come out and all of the different rule sets that keep coming out, which is awesome, but for someone like me, I don't have that much money to go spend and buy new sets or new series of Magic cards. So that's why I like this one. It's self-contained. You can buy this game, it's around $30 to $40. You buy it one time and you're set. You can play a lot of different times without really the game getting stale, which is another reason why I enjoy it. I would guess I play this game maybe 10 to 15 times a year. And like I said, I had it for a couple of years, and it's a game I always want to go back to. So that's it. That's all the time I have on this episode. Thank you so much for watching. For Beyond the Box, my name is Nick, and have a great rest of your day.